Hey guys, welcome back to Braille Society. Today we've got a cake topper tutorial for you and we're showing you how to make them step by step with your Cricut Maker. So the first thing I've done is created a blank canvas. So as you can see, I'm ready to go with a brand new design. So the first thing you want to do is come over to this left hand panel and click on the word text. This will bring up a text box and you're just going to type in your chosen text. So I'm going to show you a couple of things. First up, if you just gotten engaged, we'll do one for that. Okay, so it's nice and simple. And I'll do the other one at the same time. So for the other one, say you're doing a wedding day cake topper that you want a bit more personalised, maybe with your names. We're going to go with Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I'm actually going to do Mr. and Mrs. and Smith in two separate text boxes. You don't have to do this, but it will make it easier to move them around afterwards. Let's start with the single word, which in this case is engaged. So to be a cake topper, if you're going to cut out around this shape so that it's just the word rather than it being like hollowed out inside another shape, you need all of these letters to be attached, otherwise they're just going to fall apart and be single letters when you make your cut. So to do that, we need to decrease the letter spacing between each letter. So before you start messing around with the letter spacing, you want to choose the font that you're ultimately going to want to use for your cake topper, because the letter spacing varies from font to font. So there's no point messing with it now before you've done that. So to change the font, if you don't want to use this particular one, you go up here, to click the down arrow. I'm going to filter by what's already on my system so that I don't have to pay for any of the fonts unless you're subscribed, in which case you'll have a bigger selection of fonts to choose from. This particular one, I'm going to select my Roseville, I'm not sure how you say it. So I'm going to select this one here. So as you can see, that letter spacing is quite wide. So I need this to all join up. So to do that, you come up here to where it says letter space. As you see at the moment, it says 1.2. You can use these up and down arrows to alter that. Okay, so at this point, as you can see, some of my letters are now nicely joined up, but others aren't. So I've still got gaps. So if you want to overcome this without, again, making a mess by this now overlapping and all that kind of thing, you need to be able to separate these letters. So to do that, you go over here to where it says advanced and ungroup letters. Okay, so now as you can see, each letter is its own individual text box essentially. So I'm going to use this to be able to move these together to become one word. So it looks like my GED is already pretty well joined up. So I am going to just drag over there to group these together. So I can come over here and hit group. Or you could just drag it. Now I'm going to drag across. So you see they now move as a unit. And I've now joined that up to the A. This part is now nicely joined up, but I still need to move these two letters across. So I'm now going to just select my N and make it so it's nicely connected, and the E. The next thing you want to do is make sure the whole word is now grouped up together. So again, just drag and hit group. Okay, so now you've got one word again. All right, to make sure it cuts as one continuous word and doesn't try to still cut these joints that are still there even though we can't see them to the naked eye, you need to come down to this bottom right hand corner and hit weld. Now as you can see, that has messed up my E slightly, so I'm going to undo and just try and reposition these two letters slightly. So just ungroup them again, come back over here. So it probably just needs a tad more spacing. So I'm going to drag these two just a little bit further to the right. Okay, and see if that's done the trick. So just repeat those steps, group, weld, and there you go. You should be fine now. Okay, so that topper is ready to go and be cut onto your card. If you want to do something that has sort of 2 lines or more words, again, the trick here is to make sure that everything is connected to something, so it all holds together once you make your cut. So I've just messed around with different, like being in capitals, lowercase. I've not put a space in between Mr. and Mrs. here, because again, I want them to connect as words, so the space would just get in my way. Again, having made them into text boxes, if you recall from earlier, just makes it easier for me to drag these around. But again, as with the previous cake topper, first things first is making sure you select the font that you want for each so that you're not making unnecessary changes. So, as before, you're going to select your font. This time, let's use something different. Let's go with Watershed. So if you don't have these fonts on your computer, you might be able to search the internet for free downloadable fonts. Obviously, just make sure you're doing it from a reputable source and be careful about what you download from the internet, but there's lots of free, pretty fonts out there that you can use for your designs. So I'm going to make that same change here. Okay. So as you can see, I've got letter spacing to deal with and line spacing. So firstly, I'm going to deal with the spacing on the Smith so that I can use that as my kind of base for later. So coming back up here to the letter spacing and decreasing. So now you can see some letters are joined, but others aren't quite. So as before, we're going advanced, ungroup letters, and then we can drag more of the individuals. So I'm grouping these ones so I can drag them as a unit. Now I'm just going to regroup that whole word so I can move it as one. Repeat those steps for the Mr. and Mrs. or Mrs. Mrs., Mr. and Mr., whatever combination you've got. Okay, and now I'm going to reposition this so it sits on the Smith and is connected. So you just mess around with that until you feel you've got it so it's both legible and comfortably connected and visually pleasing. Okay. And then I'm just going to group this together and hit weld as before. Okay. So there are your 2 designs. Now the only thing to think about is obviously their overall size in relation to the size of your cake. So if you've got a multi-tiered cake and you're just putting something on the top tier, which will inevitably be smaller, obviously you need to bear that in mind with the dimensions that you make this. If you're just having a single tier cake, it's probably a bigger dimension, bigger diameter, and therefore you maybe want to make your cake topper slightly bigger. So I'm going to make my sort of wedding day cake topper approximately 5 to 6 inches in length. You can do that just by hitting these little 2 arrows and dragging to your desired size. So if you want these dimensions to alter in relation to each other, you can hit this little padlock key, which unlocks it and allows you to kind of resize the other way. Okay. Once you're happy with that, you can just lock it back up and continue to do this resizing. You can also use these dimensions in here if you want to just type in the dimensions you want. With my engaged cake topper, I'm going to assume I'm just having a single tier cake, which might have a bigger dimension. So it doesn't look lost on the top of the cake, I'm just going to make this closer to 6 to 7 inches. So again, I'm just going to drag across. As you see, those numbers are changing as I'm altering. These are in inches, so just bear that in mind. It doesn't matter where you drag these on this page at this point, as they'll get organised on the mat at the next stage. So you're almost ready to make your cut. Just make sure when you go up here that your line type is set to cut rather than draw or anything else. And the same on the other, just check you're on cut. I'm going to cut mine in 2 different colours. Just for lack of confusion's sake, I'm going to change this one to sort of a gold. And I'm going to change this one to a more silvery colour. Okay. This also tells your Cricut that you're wanting to do them out of different materials. So when I go to make it, in that top right hand corner, as you can see, there's now only one topper on my mat, and there's a second topper on a second mat. So it separated them out nice and easy. Now your design is on the mat, this is a really great opportunity to make sure that you're connected at each point that you want it to be, so that nothing falls away once the cut's made. Also on here, this is basically a print preview screen. You can move this topper around if you want it to cut somewhere else on your mat. This little red line gives you an indication that it needs to be within those red lines, just to give yourself a bit of leeway on your material. I like to give a bit extra, but that's just me. You don't need to switch on the mirror function for cake toppers because you're just gonna have it cut the way it is. You're not trying to flip it at any point. Okay. As you can see again with the engage, just checking you're connected all the way across and you can move it. Coming back to the first design, you're now ready to cut, so you just need to get your mat, your strong grip mat, and add your material of choice to the mat. Once you've got your design positioned, we're going to move over to the right hand bottom corner and hit continue. This will now connect with your machine, so just make sure it's all plugged in and switched on. And you need to set your base material. I'm using the Cricut shimmer paper. It comes up on here because I've set it as a favourite. It's really handy if you're regularly using a particular material to set it as your favourite, just so you don't have to search for it every time. If what you're using isn't on this list, just hit Browse on Materials and select from the list. So highlight that option. This takes you to this point 2 and you're going to load your blade. So we're going to load our blade into clamp B, so you just open it up, grab your blade. So it's the fine point one, so it's the one with the almost barely there point. Okay, and then we just pop it in the top here. Close the clamp like so, and it just locks it into place. Once you've loaded the blade, you're now going to load the mat. Firstly, check that all 4 star wheels are in place, then grab your mat and slide them under the little plastic hooks on either side. This helps it trace in place. Then press the flashing button on top. You're now ready to go, so press the flashing C Cricut logo on the top and your cut will start. Just make sure you've got a good clearance behind your machine so that your mat doesn't hit anything as it pulls it through. Need to weed out the negative space on your project. So those are the parts that you do not want to appear on your final design. I'm just going to rotate the mat to do this so that my sleeve doesn't stick to the mat and mess it up. So you just want to turn it around to a good angle for you. I'm going to remove the outer excess to start with. and then you want to remove all the pieces in between. And as you see, there's your completed design. To get it off the mat, you want to flip the mat over and pull the mat away from your project. This means that hopefully your design won't curl. You want it to remain as flat as possible. Once you've flipped your design over, decide where on your design you want to attach your stick. Hopefully somewhere roughly central where it's going to be concealed by the back of the design. Then you're going to take your glue gun and you're going to apply a small amount of glue just to the part where you're attaching. And then you want to aim to be as straight as possible. Then leave to dry for a few seconds and you're done. If you liked the video, please give us a like, hit subscribe so you don't miss any future content, and I'll see you next time.